Okay, here is a brand new made just for you video. I know, dorky, but I'm saying this because so far all of the others are the previously recorded. Apparently, I've never recorded this one because we normally meet when I cover this chapter. And so I didn't have one ready. So I'm making it for you now. I guess that's it. So let's get this PowerPoint up and shared so you can see it as my stuff here decides whether or not it wishes to work. All righty. So here we go. All right. So we are going to be doing chapter 20. I am going to attempt to use something so I'm not constantly leaning on the computer. If it doesn't work the first time or two, then I'll have to do something different, but I'm going to try. Anyway, here we go. Hey, it worked. Yay. So we talked about various evolution stuff already. Now we're going to talk about how it affects, structure. The question here is, does evolution lead to the perfect animal form? No, because it's not going to waste energy. It's going to get to what works then. That's pretty much what this whole thing's about. So we're going to have a nifty giraffe. We're going to talk more about giraffes later, and I'm going to give you some, what I consider some fun trivia. Has to do with the vertebrae, but here we're just doing this. All right, structure and function. About this giant nerve is what we're going to talk about. In the adult giraffe, and we have an image coming up in just a second, this travels from the brain, then makes a U-turn around the aorta and the chest, the heart, and then extends back up to the neck muscles in the throat. Huge. I want to get to the picture. There we go. There's the picture. This nerve, it's the part in black. Do you see how long it's going for that giant U-turn? This clearly is not a perfect design. This is just as it evolved, as the neck kept growing, as it kept getting longer, whatnot, the nerve just had to adjust. The reason it's not perfect is this is not exactly the most energy efficient, so to speak. But in order to make it perfect, the whole thing would have had to been redesigned, like, cut it, restitch, that kind of stuff. Nature just made its adjustments as it needed, so it would still function as it needed to. That's all it is. The book loves to use different little things to try to show you stuff. I hate this one, but basically this is just trying to show you that what might be the most efficient might not always be what you use. Evolutionary wise, like I said, it's just the one that worked and it just keeps making slight adjustments. That's all. Now, you've probably heard of anatomy and physiology. Some people are going to have to take A&P 1 and 2. A&P is literally anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of the structure. Physiology is study of the function. So when you hear anything about anatomy, that's going to be the actual structure, like the kidney. So in anatomy, you would study the actual kidney. Physiology, you would study how the kidney filters your blood. So hope that makes sense. Now, we've learned the word hierarchy. That's part of what you've been having to do when you do the domain, kingdom, phylum thing. Now, this is going to be hierarchy of levels of organization. Bio 1, 2, 3, we started with like molecule, and then we worked our way up to cell. We didn't go past cell. Now, this course, we're going to go past. So you have a bunch of cells that are similar that work together to form a tissue. A lot of tissues that work together form an organ. Different organs that work together are organ systems. So that's pretty much what this part's going to be talking about. So this is showing you the muscle cell making the muscle, which makes the organ of the heart, and then the heart is part of the circulatory system. All of these systems together make up the organism, which is the entire beast. Here, the giraffe. So tissues and cells. We have tissues, groups of cells, common structure, common function. Animals, like the giraffe and us, have four main categories of tissues. We have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Yes, I skipped right on past that. You should know that by now. Epithelial tissues, sheets of closely packed cells that cover body surfaces and line internal organs and cavities. Oh, I am just now remembering how come I normally do this one in person. It's because I normally end up saying something I'm not supposed to say. So I'll have to keep up to make sure I don't slip up. Okay. So epithelial tissues are named by the number of cell layers they have and the shape of the cells on the surface. Epithelial cells come in three shapes. So here we go. We have our simple squamous epithelium, simple cuboidal epithelium, stratified squamous, and simple columnar. I don't know why columnar is so hard for me to say, always is. Now I said a moment ago, three shapes. A and D, same shape, just different stacking. So notice it says simple squamous and then stratified squamous. Squamous is the shape of that cell. Simple squamous, a layer. Stratified, lots of layers. So there you go. Cuboidal, take a look, you can see what it looks like, and columnar, they're like columns. Connective tissue can be grouped into 6 major types. Connective tissues, huge, very important. And if you remember bio 1, 2, 3, when we covered genetics, we covered Marfan syndrome. And I said one of the big deals was that it affects the connective tissue. So here you go. Connective tissue, we've got loose connective tissue, fibrous connective tissue, adipose tissue, cartilage, bone, and blood. Yes, bone and blood are types of connective tissue. How about that? Adipose tissue. That's the one I love to take a moment and ask if anybody knows what adipose is. Since you can't really respond, since this is a video, I'll tell you in bio 1, 2, 3, we had a video, not a video, a slide, and I spent a moment talking about adipose tissue, and it had penguins on it. The adipose tissue is fat. So the penguin has that big fat pouch here, the adipose tissue, to protect its organs, and it flops on its tummy on the ice and slides. So there you go, just so you know. All right, here it's trying to show you what each of these would look like under a microscope. So the loose connective tissue is under the skin. Fibrous connective tissue forms a tendon. Adipose tissue, like I said, that's our fat. Cartilage is at the ends of a bone. It's also, you know, like your nose, your ears, this is cartilage. Bone, femur, you know, ulna radius, that kind of thing. I say ulna radius because it's showing the arm up there. And then blood. Pretty sure everybody knows what blood is. Muscle tissue, most abundant tissue in most animals. A lot of muscle tissue. You need the muscle tissue to move everything, basically. So we have skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. Skeletal muscle is what causes every single one of your voluntary movements. It's because the muscle that is attached to the skeleton is what you are saying, hey, let's move. So basically, if you can think of it and make it move, that's a skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle, there's one right here. It's your heart. Totally involuntary. You cannot control your heart. Now, can you think things to make it speed up or slow down? Yeah, sure. But that's not controlling it. You can't sit there and just go stop beating and make it stop. Not going to happen. Yeah. Smooth muscle, walls of internal organs such as the intestines. These are smooth. This is where I normally get into trouble because I ask you, why would your smooth muscles need to be on the inside of things like your intestines? And then I say something along the lines of, because you don't want to hold that poop up. There you go. Literally, it's smooth. It's involuntary because you are not controlling their functions. They control themselves. They know when to push things along, but it really is trying to keep everything smooth. So here we go, skeletal muscles. Take a look at that image. See nice little stripes. You take a look at that skeletal muscle. It looks different than the other muscles. 100% it looks different. Then we have our cardiac muscle, again, the heart, and then your smooth muscle. Notice they don't have those stripes like this, like the skeletal muscle. Then we have nervous tissue and neurons. Nervous tissue senses stimuli and rapidly transmits information. This means the nervous tissue is going to notice something happening and send the info along. The neurons are going to carry these signals with electrical impulses. Very important, because we are basically we're like walking bags of bacteria with an electric charge and a lot of water. That's pretty much what humans are. It's kind of weird to break us down that way, but there you go. Other cells in the nervous tissue insulate the axons, nourish the neurons, and regulate the fluid around the neurons, because those neurons are insanely important. If you've ever known anyone who has had like the exams where they put the stuff on there and they read the brain waves, or if you've been unfortunate enough to know anyone who is brain dead, it's the electrical impulses that they are measuring. Brain dead means the whole body is alive, everything's still kicking. Well, not really kicking, but you know what I mean. Heart's going, breathing, all the organs are functioning, but there's no electricity in the brain. That's because the neurons are no longer firing, and then that means that organ is not working, because without the electrical impulses, it's not alive. So there you go. So each tissue performs very specific functions. They're all made to do what they're supposed to do. This is also why they're shaped exactly the way they are. Here it's letting you know small intestines lined with the columnar epithelium. Inner surface of the small intestine has many finger-like projections. These little finger-like projections are, it increases surface area, because if it was like this is all the surface area. As soon as you have this, you have all this extra surface area. That helps where anything is absorbing the nutrients, because the more surface area, the more that they're touching stuff and they can pull stuff out. Trying to remember when I end up talking about this, because I normally talk about the cilia and stuff like that inside your intestines for nutrition stuff, but I think that's down the road. So here you go. This is showing you inside the small intestines, which is where most of your nutrients are going to be absorbed. You have the epithelial tissue at the bottom, connective tissue, smooth muscle, then more connective tissue, and this is where you've got your columns, because it is trying to absorb everything it can. I was about to tell you about the brush border and stuff, but you don't need to worry about that. So now, transplants, big thing. Bioengineers are seeking ways to repair or replace damaged tissues and organs. There's a whole lot of stuff being done on this, and you have a paper you're going to write about transplanting organs. So here you go. There's a whole lot of people who are on the transplant list. It is not a fun thing to be on, and there are more people waiting for an organ than there are people donating organs, and so this is definitely a huge topic. So some of them are trying to figure out ways to grow new tissues and organs in order to be able to grow new organs for people who need them. Others are trying to figure out how to use a 3D printer using actual cells in tissues from the person in order to create a new organ, which is pretty friggin' cool. Still in works. They've been testing out a lot, and most of the time it's a kidney that they're testing on because kidneys are one of the most sought after organs. Each organ system typically consists of many organs, has one or more functions, and works with other organ systems to create a functional organism. Yeah, that goes up to that whole hierarchy that we talked about at the very beginning. So think about, well, we're about to cover all the different systems, so never mind. Here we go. I just remember this was the next slide. So we've got the skeletal system. All your bones and your cartilage, all of those together make up your skeletal system. We have our respiratory system and our circulatory system. These two work together. You will learn more of this when we cover the way the heart works, and you're going to have to memorize the flow and everything like that. We will practice it. But you inhale the air, it goes into your lungs. While it's in the lungs, that's when the oxygen gets into your blood, which goes into your heart, which then shoots it all around your body. So it's dropping off the oxygen, picking up the carbon dioxide. It comes back to the heart, puts it back into the lungs, so then you can exhale the carbon dioxide. So these are two different systems, but these two systems work closely related. So you normally see them right next to each other. Then we have the integumentary system, hair, skin, nails, that kind of thing. Muscular system. It's just showing you the skeletal muscles here, but you know, there's more than just that. But the muscular system, huge, because again, we're mostly muscle on top of the water and everything. Then we have our urinary system and digestive system. These two also work together, but yeah, I don't know how else to say it. Anyway, digestive system begins with mouth, ends with anus, because it's everywhere from when you first put the food in to how it goes through and comes back out. Yes, the liver is part of the digestive system. Then we have the urinary system, and I mentioned kidneys earlier. This little breakdown is something that is normally on a test somewhere, where you have to identify the kidney, the ureter, urinary bladder, and the urethra. You can just say bladder instead of urinary bladder. But the kidney, the blood's going through the kidney is going to be cleaning the blood, it's going to be removing stuff, it's also getting some of the fluids from there. The fluids are going to come down the ureter into the bladder where it holds, and then when you pee, it comes out the urethra. So that's what that is. We have our endocrine system. So all those are listed here. This is where most of the hormones are going to come from. Lymphatic and immune system. I have referred to this as another one of those super highways before when I talked about the lymph system. Nervous system, brain, all the way down that spinal cord, and then as it radiates out. And then we've got the reproductive system. Very similar in men and women, but also very different. So there you go. Organ systems work together to perform life's functions. Here you go. I don't really have to cover this one because I already did when I told you about how the circulatory system and the respiratory system work together. So talked about this already, so I'm going to skip on. Integumentary system protects against physical injury, infection, excessive heat, or cold, and drying out. So that basically means our outside barrier. You might not think about the fact that our hair is part of what's supposed to protect us, but that's the origin of the hairs, you know, to kind of help keep you warm, that kind of thing. Evolutionary wise, this is why I have to specify something here. So I'm going to say evolutionary wise, this is why people who are naturally closer to the equator tend to have less body hair than people farther from the equator. However, now we can fly all over the place and we can control our own environment's not the right word. Basically, we have houses we can go into and we can turn on the air conditioning or the heat. So we don't have to rely on that as much anymore. So Now it's just the genes that are left over from way back when we couldn't control that. People closer to the equator, like true African, like pure African descent, tend to have the darker skin, tend to have, they're taller, leaner, and less body hair. Very pure African descent, like Whoopi Goldberg is one of the ladies I always use as an example, does not have eyebrows because that excess body hair is not needed that close to the equator because trying to dissipate the heat, not hold it in. When you then go to the Inuits, the people who live like way away from the equator, super cold, these people tend to be very pale, very short, wider, and very hairy because trying to have less surface area to hold the heat in and the hair is to help keep you warm. So there you go. That's one way to remember it. Okay, skeletal system. We already know this. This is what helps protect everything. If you didn't have a skeletal system, you couldn't be upright. If you have ever tried to eat while slumped like this or laying down, so much more difficult. Proper skeletal function, being able to be up, is huge. Not to mention, of course, protection like chest, the sternum, the ribs, and the brain case, the skull. Muscular system, we've already talked about this, that it helps you move. It also maintains posture because it's helping hold the skeletal system up and produces heat. Urinary system, I talked about this a moment ago when I talked about the kidneys. I told you that it cleans the blood. So it takes the waste products from the blood, turns it into urine, and then helps you pee it out. Regulates a bunch. Digestive system, this is where you're taking in your energy, you're taking in the nutrients you need, and then your body is breaking it down and then passing it along, and then anything it can't digest or process kicks out. Whoops, I accidentally did it twice. So let me see, what did I skip? There we go. Organ systems work together. Here we go. We've got the endocrine system. I already told you. Hormones that help regulate pretty much everything. Lymphatic system and the immune system works together. Again, I refer to the lymphatic system as another superhighway because it, it goes everywhere. This is why when we covered cancer in Bio 123, I talked about this. Immune system, this is going to be linking up to also all those lymph nodes. You have all these little lymph nodes that are helping produce the lymph fluids in order to run everything around, and different organs in the lymphatic system are there to help either clean up and fight infection or to battle infection or make something. Like in the case of bone marrow is making all of your blood pretty much. It's making the different white blood cells that are trying to help fight off infection, stuff like that. Nervous system, there you go. It's what I started to say dictates. That is not the word. It's the one, I really hate when I forget words. Detects, that was the word. See, I know it was close. Detects something happening, the stimulus. You touch something hot, it's the nervous system that notices and makes you pull your hand away, stuff like that. So there you go. Reproductive system, we already know this. Reproductive system produces the gametes, whether it's your eggs or your sperm. That's what it has. It also is what helps kick the woman's body into high gear when she's pregnant to start producing milk. Yeah, there we go. Section of skin, we're showing you how it is. The very top layer of the skin is the epidermis. So when you're looking at the skin like this, this is the epidermis. A small cut is still going to just be through the epidermis. When it starts to look a little different, that's the dermis. That's when you're probably going to do more damage. If it's a massive cut, that gets you to the hypodermis. Hypo for low. So hypodermis, this is underneath the skin. This is a massive deep cut. If you have ever been cut so deep that you see white in there, probably not bone that you saw unless, a doctor told you it was. That weird whitish, yellowish, that's going to be the adipose tissue. That's very bad. Don't do that. Okay, so now bit by bit, we cover different scientific questions and how to do stuff. So this one is talking about the importance of examining only one variable at a time. That means you have to test for only one thing, because if you do too much, you don't know which thing you're actually testing for. So this one, they're talking all about pimples. You're going to see a thing with bar graphs talking about a test. I'm going to take a moment to talk about pimples. Everybody's had a pimple at some point in their life. And a lot of people thought that as soon as they were no longer a teenager, they would never have another pimple. And then you grew up and you learned, guess what? Everyone still gets pimples. What it is there is a particular little bacteria. Every pimple is basically like a tiny infection. And what happens is it just kind of breeds. When it's too much of an infection, that's when you can see the pimple. And a lot of people will want to squeeze it. You are not supposed to squeeze it, because let's see if I can use the thingy. I am trying to see if I can do the laser pointer. Come on. There we go. Laser pointer. Okay, laser pointer. Okay, here we go. Now imagine this is your pimple and you squeeze it. You're hoping all the pus inside comes out this way. But sometimes it can shoot out to the side like this. It might rupture and it's going to make it worse, or it can rupture back here. So you should never, ever, ever actually pop a pimple. You have pores all over your skin, and so you would think it would automatically come out, but if the wall is weakened, it can come out this way, cause an even worse infection. This is why if anybody has ever had one of those deep pimples and you've tried and tried and tried, and then all of a sudden it's like half your face looks like it's exploded, it's because that's what's happening, is all of this area is getting worse and worse. So you are not supposed to actually ever pop a pimple. That's just not a healthy thing to do. Washing your face thoroughly, that's what you need to do. Wash your face every morning and every night without fail. I raise my kids telling them that all the time, because if you notice at the bottom where it says hair follicle pore, and then you've got the oil glands. If you've ever noticed in the morning, you wake up and you're like, oh, and you feel like you have grease all over your face, it's because your body is trying to push everything out of your skin. It's cleaning itself. But you need to then wash all that oil and grime off your face. Wash it properly. And then if you use astringent, that's what I do, finish with the astringent until it runs clear. You've gotten all that gross out. Do this also at night. Wash your face before you go to bed, because before bed, you're removing all the junk from the day so it doesn't just seep in or clog your pores, because a lot of ladies will put makeup on and then they won't take it off. And overnight, when their body's doing that thing, trying to push the grease out, push the junk out, it runs into the barrier of the makeup and it's blocking it. And that causes more bumps, more infections and stuff. So washing your face, key. You have to do this. Worst thing you can do is wake up, not wash your face, and put more stuff on your face. Worst thing you can do. So there you go. Safety tip for better skin. Now, here's the graph I was saying that we're going to talk about. This is showing you about bias stuff. Reduction in pimples before and after laser therapy treatment in an uncontrolled study. So uncontrolled means they did not have a control group. They just said, here we go, we're giving you laser treatment and see how it helps pimples. This is showing you that before laser therapy, the average number of pimples was about 35. After the third treatment, the average was, I would say, probably about 6 or 7. So if you saw this, you would be like, yes, laser therapy worked. However, if you take these people and treat one side of their face versus the other side, notice before laser therapy, both sides are exactly the same. 4 weeks after the third treatment, the side that was treated is substantially lower. But then 10 weeks after the third treatment, not all that much lower. This lets you know that it helps, but it doesn't really help as much as you think. In reality, probably what happens is somebody knows they're in a study, they're trying to take care of their face. They're probably just simply washing their face more. They're taking better care of their skin. This shows you the importance of having a controlled thing. So here where it says controlled randomized single blind study, it means that the person who was being treated did not know which side of their face was properly being treated. That would mean they weren't just doing laser on one side. They probably did laser on both sides, but only used the actual true laser on one side, if that makes sense. So, external exchange and internal regulation. Every organism, open system that must exchange matter and energy with its surroundings. So this has evolved as animals evolved. Yeah, totally skipping past these. A lot of that we should have covered in, I don't think they were covered. I think it's covered in the chapters after this one, like invertebrates and stuff like that. This is just showing you how our lungs work. Trachea, and then the blood vessels and stuff. So this is just showing you that it just kind of dissipates and then comes back in. It's open system, meaning these are not closed arteries and veins. It has to be able to just flow back and forth. Kind of a hard concept to think of when we tend to only think of things like our blood vessels, or I normally use a hose as an example for a lot of stuff. It's a little harder to envision how it just flows open like that. All right. Conditions often fluctuate widely in the external environment, but homeostatic mechanisms regulate internal conditions. Basically, what this is saying is stuff outside is going to make our body react in a certain way. And I'm going to give two examples in just a moment. First, they're going to show the owl and point out that it's very, very cold outside, but the owl's body does stuff to keep its inside warm enough, because if it is below freezing outside, if the owl's body didn't do what it needed to do, the owl's organs would straight up just freeze. That's how come if an owl is dead, it's going to be a frozen rock. But alive, its body is doing what it needs to keep everything exactly where it needs to go. This is done through something called a negative feedback. So homeostasis means balanced. It just wants to be like this. And I will do this like a seesaw constantly when I talk about homeostasis, because your body wants to be this. It wants to be perfectly balanced. Sometimes it'll get out of whack and then it will tell itself, ooh, I need to do this, so on. So the control systems, it's going to detect a change and then tell the body what to do to fix it. The negative feedback keeps the internal variables steady and permits only small fluctuations. And so it's like, oh, need to make this little itty bitty change. And then that's what it does. I don't worry about the portable heater thing. This is what I was trying to get to. So here is one example. And then I will tell you another example. But this one's my favorite example. So this is the one I usually use. Temperature. I love that it's in Celsius because most people don't think about it this way. Body temperature, approximately 37 degrees Celsius. For us, we would say that's what, 98.6, something like that. Not everybody's body's exact. I tend to run a little bit lower than that. But anyway, right here, nice and normal, perfect weather. This is where you are. Now, imagine, we'll do the top part first. It's really cold. And the body goes, whew, I'm cold. And so it's like, oh, it's getting out of balance. It's not perfectly like this. It's not like this because it's cold. And the body says, oh my gosh, I need to do something to keep from being too cold. Well, a couple of things happens. When you are really, really cold, think of body stuff that happens to you. I like having feedback for this one, but again, can't because video. Cold. Think of those goosebumps, goose pimples, whatever you want to call it. I had one person who just called them the chills. I grew up hearing them as goosebumps, little bitty bumps all over your body. Also happens when you're afraid, but I'll give you that reason in just a moment. When all of a sudden you get all those goosebumps because you're really cold, it's because your body, like I said before, is covered in pores, tiny, tiny holes, and it's to help let the air flow. It's to help regulate your temperature. So when it's really, really cold, it wants to trap all of the heat in, and so poof, those pores slam shut. That's what you're seeing. All the pores are now slammed shut, and that's what makes the little bumps. If you're afraid, it's because that also helps hold the hair up and makes you look a little bit bigger. If we were our early evolutionary parts where we had enough hair to make it look like we got bigger, makes you more threatening. But for cold, closing tight to try to trap in all the heat. Then you start doing this, you're shivering. Your body is trying to make energy, basically use energy, warm you up, because the more it does this, the more heat it's going to dissipate and the toastier you're going to get. So bam, it slams those pores shut and then makes you shiver, and then you start to warm back up. So that's one way of the negative feedback. Now, nice normal, and then, I don't know, you live in Georgia in 2022 in June, hot. Notice I'm not even going hot, I'm hot. So hot. What do you do when it's hot? What does your body do? Think about it. We all know you sweat profusely. Well, here you go. It's another way where the body's trying to cool itself off. It's trying to balance it again. Those pores that slammed shut when you were cold, now they open up and they start pushing fluid out. They're pushing fluid out, opening wide to let the heat out, pushing the fluid out to try to cover you in a sheen of sweat. Because think of this. Everybody here, I am going to assume, has been in a pool or some kind of body of water, even if it's just a shower. You're wet, you step out, doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. If you go straight from water out, you'll feel that breeze. It's like, whoo, that little bit right there. The water helps capture the air. It helps pull it, and then that helps release some of the heat. That's how come, like, when you get out of the pool, you feel chill for a moment before you adjust again to the heat. So that's pretty much what your body's trying desperately to do. It is opening the pores and trying to cool itself off. So there you go. The other feedback loop, negative feedback loop that I normally talk about has to do with blood sugar and diabetes. I think we cover it more later, but the basic gist is somebody is diabetic and they're, if somebody's diabetic, their blood sugar drops, they need some kind of sugar to pull it back up. Or they've had too much sugar, so it's spiking, and then they have to do an insulin shot to bring it down. That is where we are helping the homeostasis. If you do not have diabetes, your body naturally kicks that stuff out. So say that you just ate, I don't know, an entire box of Skittles, way too much sugar. You shouldn't have done this. Your body goes, this is too much sugar, and it throws the insulin out into your body to help break it down because it's trying to balance it out. So your body is designed to help keep you where you're supposed to be. That's pretty much it. You should be able to do all this stuff. Lots of those. And then I gave this handy table at the end, just in case you like to have something simple to help you remember the various, I almost said the various slides, but the various tissues and muscles and whatnot. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for that. And now I am going to stop share. There we go. And yeah, so that is pretty much chapter 20. And now you get to go and do chapter 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. All of those previously recorded. And I hope they're not too bad. I haven't looked back at them. And I'm hoping you had a nice day of not coming to class. And I will see you next week please do not forget to collect your 3 days worth of activities and your 3 days worth of consumption, because next week when we come back to class, we will be doing the energy budget lab. So it is imperative that you get this part done. I guess that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Yeah, that's it. So peace.